guys, welcome back to Mentor, yet another video podcast. It's once again great to see you all here. A special welcome to all you new joiners to the channel. I really need you guys to interact. That's how this channel works. So if you haven't been here before, if you haven't interacted before, then if you have any questions or any kind of feedback that you want to give me, then go into the comment field below. Make sure that you put your comments down. If you have any questions, I might be answering the questions immediately, or I might be using them to build a future podcast. But that's how I want this channel to work. Nice, constructive comments, and I will keep delivering these kind of videos for you for as long as you guys like me to. Today, I have received quite a few requests from you guys about giving examples of what's happened to me during my career so far. As you can see, I'm not back in my office. I'm sitting in a airport hotel in London because I'm doing some simulator duty this week. I'm going to start off by saying that the stories that I will tell you, I will not give you specific dates or specific places or anything like that, because it's not really my place to do so. But I will tell you some of these stories because they do give you examples of why certain things that I'm talking about and certain things that I'm pressing you about are as important as I think they are. So this first thing I'm going to tell you about happened to me and a really good first officer that I really liked to fly with back in Italy about 5 years ago or so. So we were flying in on a 2-leg day into this Italian airport. It was fairly late at night, so we landed in Italy about 9 o'clock local time, and we were supposed to do our standard 25 minutes turnaround, which we did. We filled up the aircraft with fuel, we loaded on the passengers and the baggage, and as we were about to leave, this airport has stands where you don't have to push the aircraft back. You can self-position the aircraft from the stand and then taxi out to the runway for departure. So the way that we do things is that once everything is done, checklists are complete, the first officer will ask for clearance from the ground controller to start our engines. And then later on, once the engines are started, if we're on a self-positioning stand, he will ask for taxi. So he did that. He asked for startup clearance, which we received, and when we have received our startup clearance, we do something called before start flow, followed by the before start checklist. And the way that we do our scan flows in the 737 is that when you do your type rating, you learn these scan flows, which switches to move by heart, and then you do them the same way every single time, which means that they're really deeply embedded into the motoric memory of each Boeing pilot. So when we, just to give you a little bit of background to this, if you're on a self-positioning stand, we keep our hydraulic A system engaged, as in we don't switch off the hydraulic A system. But if we are on a pushback stand, which we are 90% of the time, then we switch off the hydraulic A system for pushback. And the reason we do this is a redundant safety feature, because we don't want any hydraulic pressure to be transferred into the nose wheel when we have ground personnel connecting the pushback truck and the tow bar. Now, that is redundant because normally you have a bypass pin that is inserted in order to take away the hydraulic pressure from the nose wheel. But if that would fail and we would have some other kind of electronic failure or something, there is a possibility that if the nose wheel is slightly displaced and the hydraulic pressure goes off and then on again, it might swing back into position. And if that's then connected to a nice long tow bar, it effectively becomes like a bat that will just kick whatever is in front of it. So that's why when we do pushbacks, we switch off the hydraulic A system, just to be on the safe side. Now, since we do that 90% of the time, it's really deeply embedded into the motoric memory. So my first officer did that. He switched it off, and then he realized that we're on a self-positioning stand, so we don't really need to switch it off, so he switched it back on again. Now, through a system weakness, if you do that too quickly, if you switch off hydraulic pumps and then switch them back on again immediately, there is a electric surge that goes through the pump. And in some conditions, that can actually trip the circuit breaker for the electric hydraulic pump to the A and the B system if you do it on those both systems. which is exactly what happened in this case. Now, this is not normally a problem, because we have most of our circuit breakers located behind either the first officer and the captain. Those are all those little switches that you see behind us. But in the case of the hydraulic A pumps, the electric hydraulic A pumps, the circuit breaker is located in an area called the E&E bay, which is not accessible from the cockpit and actually not accessible from outside if you're not an engineer. Which meant that we had a problem because we needed that hydraulic pump to work in order to dispatch. Now, so what happened was that we contacted our maintenance control unit, and they said, all right, good, we'll send, well, sorry about that guys, we'll send some engineers from our closest maintenance base, which is about 2 hours away by car. So you can disembark the passengers, because this is going to take 2.5 hours to do. Which is what we did. I made a PA to the passengers, and this is really important, guys. If you make good PAs, if you keep the passengers informed about what's going on, they are more likely to be accepting, not happy, but accepting any given situation. It's only if you give them inaccurate or faulty or no information that you'll get really pissed off passengers. Okay, so I told them what's happening. We had a minor technical issue that needed to be sorted out before we could go, and we had called for engineers. It's going to be a delay of about 3 hours, and I always give a little bit longer delay than what's expected, because then people will perceive that it's going quicker, which is much better than them being disappointed. So we disembarked the passengers, disembarked the crew, had a cup of coffee, lovely Italian coffee. And then about half an hour before I expected the engineers to arrive, we went back with the crew onto the aircraft. We set the aircraft up again for departure, so that when the engineers came, they could just reset the circuit breaker and we could just go, to minimize the delay. Which is what happened. Almost all the passengers on board, when the engineers arrived, the engineers came up, they popped the circuit breaker back in again, they verified that it worked, and then they put themselves in the car, because remember, this is about 11:30 at night now. To go back home to their home base. So I waited until all the passengers were on board, because I really wanted to make a PA apologizing for the delay and telling them what was going on and making sure that everyone really heard the PA. So once everyone was on board, I took up the PA mic and I started talking. And very quickly I realized that no one could hear anything in the back. There was not a single word coming out through the speaker system. So I then tried my audio control panel. You can use both the hand mic, which is located on the back of the center pedestal, but you can also use your headset to make PAs. Try that, nothing worked. Asked the first officer to try his side, he tried, nothing worked. So now I started to have a feeling that something wasn't really the way it was supposed to. Now this failure in itself, the fact that the PA didn't work, had nothing to do with the hydraulic system. But it didn't really feel like something it felt like something wasn't really the way it was supposed to be. So I tried different things that make noises down the back, like the attendant call button, which is a button on the overhead panel that you press in order to get the cabin crew's attention through an oral signal and also a visual signal saying that the flight crew wants something. I pressed the button, nothing, completely quiet. Then I contacted the cabin crew and we started talking, and we realized that there was no way for me in flight with the locked cockpit door to make them aware of any issues in the front, and that is a real problem. So I called our maintenance control, tell them again that now we have a completely different, unassociated problem, but we can't, this is what we have, it doesn't work. So they said, alright, I'm going to tell the engineers to turn back to you guys again, but remember, this is an Italian motorway they're on. It might take them half an hour going in the wrong direction before they can find an exit and then come back in again. So I said, fair enough, so be it. But I also realized that now it had taken another half an hour from where all the passengers had boarded the aircraft, and passengers who had already gotten a 3-hour delay or 2.5-hour delay had now a 3-hour delay, and they started to mumble in the back. So I realized I have to tell the passengers what's going on. But remember, I didn't have a PA because the PA system was down. So I had to suit up, full uniform, go back, stand in front of the passengers and give a PA just like I'm talking to you now. Loud voice, clear, concise, tell them what's going on. And then of course that couldn't be heard towards the end of the flight of the aircraft, because the 737 is bigger than you think. So I had to go down midship stand over the overwing exit and give exactly the same PA from there so that everyone could hear me. Now, if you are in front of the passengers and the passengers can see you, they will also have a chance to interact. So some passengers, there will always be one, spoke up and said, how can we trust that this aircraft is now safe to fly, because we've had one problem and now we have another problem. And I told them the way it is, which is I will be sitting in front, in the top end of this aircraft, okay? I will not move 1 inch away unless I am perfectly satisfied that this aircraft is serviceable for flight. So the engineers will come, they will look at this failure. If it's a unsafe failure, we will not be flying today. If it is fixable, they will fix it and we will be on our way. But that's why we're waiting for engineers, which is good. They completely, when I gave them that explanation, everyone bought it. And it was actually a fairly good experience to be able to speak to the passengers face to face. We very rarely do that. So on this occasion, when the engineers came, they popped their head up in the E&E bay and they realized that the circuit board that was controlling all of the audio input had got some kind of malfunction in it, a short in it. So it wasn't usable. We couldn't fly with that. So we had to disembark the passengers, put them into hotels. Me and the crew had to go to hotels as well, which is very, very rare because these aircraft are really reliable. It's very rare to have one technical problem, even rarer to have 2 problems. But they were probably related, as in that electrical surge that happened when the first system was switched off and on again was probably the reason for the short circuit. But that's just me speculating. The point I want to make with this is that I was in my full uniform and I could speak to the passengers, straight to them, looking the part. I could produce the image that I wanted for both me, for my crew and for my airline. And this was under circumstances which were fairly hard, as in the passengers had now been on board for over an hour. They had been delayed for 4 hours at this point, and it's 1 o'clock at night, and there's people with families with children on board. So if I would not be looking the part, it's much more likely that I would have ended up with not an out of control situation, but a much harder situation with my passengers. But since I had my full uniform on and I could kind of project a picture of safety, of professionalism, then they listened to me and it worked. Which is why I keep pressing in all my videos for you guys, when you get your first airline job, make sure that you do keep your uniform on you, with you, that you look the part, that you look and act professional in front of the passengers. And that's really the point of this story. I'm gonna make more podcast about how to make proper PAs, what to tell the passengers and so on later on, but because PAs are also a crucial information bit. You know yourself, if you're sitting in a cabin and you are starting to be delayed and no one tells you anything, you will start to look at your neighbor, you will start to talk, and there's going to be anxious feelings building up in the cabin. But if you have information, if your cabin crew or if your pilot comes in and tells you, sorry about the delay, it's due to this and this and that, it's much more likely that you can take extended times of delay without getting anxious, without these bad feelings building up in the cabin. So making proper PAs, even if you have nothing to say, is really, really important. Okay. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that you put your comments into the comment section and like it if you like the video. It's great to see. And I will see you next time. Thank you.